Welcome, Dave.
It's nice to be here. Thanks for having me, Daniel.
Nice to have you. Okay, to start off with, how did you get connected with the Indian teachings and yoga in general, or Swami Vivekananda?
The long story, the medium story is that I was raised Unitarian. My mother was Jewish, is Jewish. My father was Catholic. They couldn't find anybody to marry them, so they found a Unitarian minister who would, and they decided, we're going to raise him Unitarian. And Unitarian is a movement that endorses and celebrates the different religions of the world. I went through a long period of time as a teenager and a young adult of not being interested in any kind of religion. Became a personal development instructor for one of the educational organizations of Southern California, actually offices throughout California and Hawaii. And I was teaching secular teachings, personal development, personal growth. And an emphasis started happening within the organization. There was a movement to bring more spiritual matters into our teachings.
Okay.
And at first I questioned it.
Okay.
And eventually it was presented in a way that brought me back to the idea that religion could be something wonderful. It had not really been in my life because I had been pursuing a secular career. And the more I was introduced to the philosophy of oneness, I think the first inclination I had was with the Course of Miracles. One of the teachers in my organization was involved in that. And I liked a lot of the ways that it was portraying the world. And I think I remembered actually these things being taught to me as a child, that there is perhaps a unity under the diversity of all the different religions. And so I became more involved, and then the organization, which was the Summit organization, dissolved, and I decided I was going to write a book, a secular book on personal development that would have a chapter on spirituality. When I got to the portion on spirituality, I wrote and I wrote and I wrote, and within 2 weeks I knew that I knew nothing about spirituality. I knew nothing. And I made a choice at that moment that I knew that there was validity there, so I was, since my background was teaching, I was going to become scholarly about it. Mm-hmm. The hint that I knew nothing was that I really didn't understand the difference between the word spirit and the word soul. And I said, I should know what that is if I'm going to write something about it. So I decided that I would find out what spirit and soul meant to all the different religions, not just to one religion, and to have enough information to make an educated statement of what the spiritual path might be. So I was living in Trabuco Canyon at the time, and I had passed by the Ramakrishna Center, the Ramakrishna Monastery, many times, but I thought it was a Krishna organization, the Hare Krishna.
Okay.
And I kept driving by. But I read a book by Houston Smith called The World's Religions, one of the greatest books ever written in comparative religion. If I may make this aside just for a moment, sure. The reason it's such a powerful book is because he celebrates each religion. Of course there's problems with each religion, but he focused on the spirit of each religion. And for the first time I was learning things about Judaism I had no idea. I had no idea the depth and the beauty of Judaism, even though my relatives were Jewish, and I spent, all my young life celebrating and being around Jews. Mm-hmm. And the same thing with Christianity. I had no idea of the depth of the spirit of Christianity, having hung around with my father's part of the family. They were both dysfunctional families, and therefore I didn't get the best of what they had to offer. So Houston Smith opened me up to these beautiful ideas that all these different religions are saying in different ways, mm-hmm. different varieties of really the same underlying message. And when I got to his essay on Hinduism, I was blown away by this wealth of wisdom and practice. And coming from a background of practical psychology, practical seminar, how to get from point A to point B, I was amazed at how the religion of the Hindus, which is really the Vedic religion, was so detailed on how to move from point A, which is where our normal state is of being conditioned to think of ourselves as I, me, and mine, to move from there to a more spiritual place. It had all been thought out. It had all been formulated in the most exquisite ways, unlike any system of thought I'd ever come across. I had studied and taught Maslow. I had studied and taught Erickson. I had studied and taught many different, Napoleon